I should have trusted my gut the first time I stepped into Olivia's family home. It wasn't anything obvious. No slamming doors or angry stares. No, it was in the way Henry, her father, shook my hand like I was handing him a bill he didn't want to pay. In the dry smiles, the guarded glances, the whispered jokes behind carefully polite conversations. 6 years, 6 damn years, I lived in their suburban empire just outside Asheville, North Carolina. A place where the houses were big, the secrets bigger, and the community smaller than you'd think. I married Olivia thinking love could bridge the gap between their old money pride and my simple middle-class roots. I was wrong. Henry ran a small but successful event company, at least. That's what he told the town. Behind closed doors, he ruled like a king. His sons, Caleb and Jason, followed him blindly, as if loyalty was in their blood and not in their judgment. Rebecca, Henry's wife, floated in and out of conversations like a shadow, agreeing to everything her husband decreed without a second thought. Me? I was an intruder, an extra chair at their perfect table. At first, I tried. God knows I tried. I laughed at their old jokes I didn't understand, learned to eat weird family dishes without wincing, even showed up early to help set up their over-the-top Sunday brunches. Nothing worked. I could feel it, like I was walking barefoot across a floor littered with invisible glass. Every time I brought it up to Olivia, she'd dismiss me with a quick smile. "You're overthinking it, Ethan. Dad's just tough on new people. Caleb was treated the same way." Right. Caleb, the golden boy, who could crash a car at 16 and still get a brand new BMW the next week. Totally the same treatment. I stopped complaining after the 3rd year. Silence was easier, less humiliating. The only thing I didn't realize was that silence wasn't survival. It was slow death. And last Christmas, Henry made sure to bury me properly. I didn't walk into Henry's house last Christmas expecting a miracle, but I also didn't expect a public execution dressed up as holiday cheer. The moment I stepped through the door, the smell of cinnamon and overpriced candles hit me like a punch. The place looked like a damn Hallmark movie, fairy lights on every surface, a towering Christmas tree decked in gold and white, and a fireplace roaring like it was competing for attention. Caleb and Jason were already laughing about some ski trip I wasn't invited to. Rebecca floated by carrying trays of food, her smile vacant. And Olivia? She stood next to Henry, laughing too loudly, already on her 2nd glass of wine. She barely glanced at me. Dinner went exactly how you'd expect. Endless stories about their latest vacations, inside jokes I was never part of, Henry's endless praise for Caleb's brilliant new investment, a coffee shop that was bleeding money faster than it brewed lattes. I kept my mouth shut and ate my dry turkey, hoping to get through dessert without bleeding out emotionally. Then Henry clapped his hands. "Before dessert, a little surprise," he announced, grinning like a man about to reveal a trap door. Out came the gift bags, shiny dark red, each neatly labelled. Caleb got a designer watch. Jason landed a spa weekend for 2. Olivia, my wife, opened a bottle of rare whiskey I had mentioned 6 months ago, thinking maybe she'd get it for me. And me? Nothing. No bag, no card, no joke gift. Just a heavy silence that wrapped around me tighter than the scarf Jason was bragging about. Henry finally turned to me, fake surprise dripping from his voice. "Oh, Ethan! Looks like we forgot about you!" The table erupted in polite chuckles. Even Olivia. Especially Olivia. It should have broken me. It didn't. I just smiled, sat back, took a slow sip of my wine, let them think they had won, because they had no idea the storm I had been quietly preparing for them. And tonight the lightning was coming straight for Henry. The first didn't rush. Let them squirm. Let them marinate in their own smugness. I set my wine glass down, slow, careful, like I had all the time in the world. I leaned back in my chair while Henry chuckled, nudging Olivia, who tossed her hair like she hadn't just laughed at her husband being publicly humiliated. I waited until Caleb started reaching for another slice of pie, Jason launching into a boring story about his latest business venture no one cared about. That's when I spoke, casual as a knife sliding under skin. "Good thing," I said, lifting my voice just enough. "I didn't forget about you, Henry." Silence. The good kind. Heavy and instant. Henry's fake grin faltered. Caleb froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. Jason blinked, slow and stupid. Olivia narrowed her eyes at me, like she was trying to decide if I was joking. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small silver wrapped box, elegant, tasteful, the kind you don't see coming until it's too late. I placed it carefully in front of Henry, sliding it across the lace tablecloth like I was dealing a royal flush. "For you," I said, voice low. Henry hesitated. His hand, the same hand that had crushed mine in our first handshake, trembled just a little, barely noticeable, but I noticed. He peeled back the paper, slower than he probably meant to. The room was dead silent, save for the crackle of the fireplace and Rebecca's shallow breathing. When Henry lifted the lid, he froze. Inside was a stack of papers, neat, meticulously organized, bloodless. "What's this?" he asked, voice too casual, betraying a tremor. I smiled, cool and clean. "Just a few things you might want to review, before the IRS does." Henry's hand jerked. He rifled through the documents, quarterly reports, hidden withdrawals, falsified invoices. The cherry on top? A clean summary page titled Unreported Income, 7 years, estimated liability $280,000 plus. Caleb leaned over, curiosity overtaking him. His face went white as he read. Jason snatched a sheet from Henry, scanning frantically. Olivia stayed still, glass poised at her lips, staring like a woman who suddenly realized the ship was sinking and there weren't enough lifeboats. Rebecca whispered, "Henry," but he didn't answer. "You've been underreporting your company's income," I said, my voice still smooth, professional, the accountant in me refusing to let go. "And using business accounts for personal expenses. Flights, jewelry, private golf memberships. You even billed your luxury spa weekends as client entertainment." Henry slammed the lid shut. "You're making wild accusations," he spat. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, smiling wider. "No, Henry, I'm making disclosures. The kind the IRS tends to appreciate when delivered early." Caleb's chair scraped loudly as he stood up, glaring at his father. "You told me you couldn't help with the down payment because money was tight." His voice cracked at the end. Jason shoved a page into Henry's chest. "Is this why you refused to co-sign my loan? You were hiding 6 figures offshore?" Rebecca's hands trembled against her wine glass. "Is this true?" Henry said nothing. Not because he didn't have words, because every excuse he might have thrown out was now meaningless. The evidence sat in front of everyone. No shouting could erase it. No fake smiles could hide it. "You think you're some kind of hero?" Henry sneered at me finally, voice low and shaking with rage. "You've destroyed this family." I stood up calmly, fixed my cuffs. "No, Henry, you did that. I just made sure everyone could see it." The room was spiraling now, Rebecca crying quietly, Caleb swearing under his breath, Jason pacing. Olivia just sat there, stone-faced, the weight of her choices crashing down faster than she could process. And me? I felt light. I hadn't realized how heavy 6 years of swallowing insults had been until I put it all down. You planned this, Henry growled. You set me up. I shrugged. Call it whatever you want. I call it accountability. At that moment, Rebecca's chair screeched back and she stumbled toward the documents. She snatched them up, flipping page after page, horror etching itself into every new line she read. You used our retirement fund, she whispered, voice broken. You took money from the account we built for 40 years. Caleb stared at his father, disgust dripping from every syllable. You let us struggle. You lied to us. For what? To keep playing king? Henry couldn't answer. His hands were fists against the table, veins bulging, chest heaving. And then Rebecca found the final nail, a wire transfer to an undisclosed account in the Caymans. The date? Right after their 35th wedding anniversary. You were planning to leave, she said, her voice like shattered glass. Henry opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing. Good. There was nothing left to say. The truth wasn't a blade anymore. It was a hammer. And it had just smashed everything Henry built to pieces. You don't come back from this, I said quietly, mostly to myself. Not this time. Then Rebecca did something I hadn't expected. She turned to me, tears streaking her face, and nodded. Just once. A thank you, hidden inside a broken woman's final stand. I nodded back. No words. Just understanding. The man who had spent years trying to crush me under the weight of his empire had just crumbled in front of everyone he ever tried to impress. And it was only the beginning. The silence was worse than any screaming could have been. Rebecca stood frozen, still gripping the damning documents like they might catch fire if she let go. Her knuckles had gone white. Caleb stared at the floor like he might fall through it if he looked up. Jason rubbed a hand over his face, muttering something too low for anyone to hear. And Henry? He sat there, seething, trapped by his own lies, trapped by the people he thought he could keep blind forever. I didn't move. I didn't gloat. I wasn't there for their pain. I was there for the truth. And truth has a way of turning palaces into rubble faster than any hammer ever could. Rebecca finally spoke, her voice shaking. You stole from us. From me? From your children? Henry pushed back his chair, the screech loud enough to cut through bone. I built this family, he spat, standing up, towering over the table like some crumbling monument to ego. I kept us afloat. By lying, Jason said sharply. By hiding money while you watched Caleb almost lose his house, while I had to beg for a bank loan. You told me, Rebecca whispered, that we had to cancel our anniversary trip because we couldn't afford it. Her voice cracked. She pressed a hand to her chest like she was physically holding herself together. Henry rounded on her, furious. I did it for us. You did it for yourself, I said quietly. You just thought no one would ever call you out. For a second, I thought Henry might come across the table at me. His fists clenched, his jaw ticked. But he didn't move. Because even a man like Henry knew, deep down, that you can't punch your way out of the truth. And then Rebecca stumbled. She staggered sideways, clutching at the edge of the table. Her breathing went ragged, shallow, her face draining of colour. Mom! Caleb shouted, rushing forward. I was moving before my brain even fully caught up. I caught Rebecca as she collapsed into my arms, her body frighteningly limp. Jason fumbled for his phone, hands shaking so badly he almost dropped it. Call 911, I barked. Now! Henry stood frozen, his mouth open, watching like a man who had finally realized he wasn't in control anymore. The seconds dragged like hours. Jason managed to choke out the address. Caleb hovered uselessly, muttering, "Come on, come on, come on," under his breath like a prayer. I kept talking to Rebecca, kept telling her to stay with us, to breathe. Her eyes fluttered open once, dazed, unfocused, then closed again. Sirens cut through the night air minutes later, and 2 EMTs stormed in. Professional, efficient. They moved us out of the way, checked vitals, asked questions none of us could answer fast enough. As they loaded Rebecca onto the stretcher, Olivia finally found her voice. She grabbed my arm, nails digging into my jacket. "This is your fault," she hissed, her face twisted in a snarl I'd never seen before. I looked down at her hand, then at her. Calm. I peeled her fingers off me like I was brushing away a dead leaf. "No," I said, my voice like ice. "This is Henry's fault. You just helped him bury it." I followed the stretcher out to the ambulance without looking back. I didn't need to see the wreckage inside to know it was total. The hospital waiting room was all fluorescent lights and bad coffee. Caleb sat with his head in his hands. Jason paced like a caged animal. Olivia stood stiffly by the vending machine, arms crossed, looking everywhere but at me. The clock on the wall ticked loudly enough to drive a person insane. A doctor came out after what felt like an eternity. He spoke softly, words like stable for now, and significant cardiac event, and needs monitoring. I caught Caleb sagging with relief. Jason squeezed his eyes shut, mouthing a silent thank you. Olivia didn't react at all. I stood apart from them. I wasn't family, not by their rules. Never had been. The doctor left. The silence crept back in, thicker now. Caleb was the first to crack. He turned to Henry, his voice shaking with fury. "You did this," he said. "You broke her." Henry opened his mouth, probably to deflect, to spin it, but Jason cut him off. "Save it," he said coldly. "We're not buying it anymore." Henry looked at them, at the 2 sons who had worshipped him, trusted him, followed him, and realized he was utterly, completely alone. He turned his gaze to me then, pure venom. "You think you've won," he snarled. "You think you're some kind of hero." I shook my head slowly. "I'm not a hero. I just stopped letting you pretend you were." Henry's mouth twisted into a sneer. He stormed out of the waiting room without another word, his heavy steps echoing off the cheap tile floors. Good. Let him run. He couldn't outrun the IRS. Or his family's contempt. It didn't end there, of course. In the days that followed, everything cracked wider. Caleb and Jason cut ties with Henry completely. Rebecca, once she was strong enough to speak more than a few sentences, filed for divorce from her hospital bed. The event company, under federal investigation, frozen accounts. Subpoenas. Quiet whispers in the town where everyone knew everyone else's business. Olivia tried to reach out once, a pathetic email full of blame and desperation. I didn't answer. What was there left to say? She chose silence when it mattered. She chose Henry. She chose comfort over truth. I chose myself. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the outsider anymore. I felt free. It was strange how quickly things unraveled once the mask cracked. Henry's empire collapsed faster than any of us could have predicted. Investigators dug through his company's books like wolves picking a carcass clean. Every hidden account, every fake invoice, every shady transaction came to light. His name, once whispered with admiration in Asheville's tight-knit suburbs, became something you muttered under your breath, like a curse. He lost everything. The business, the respect, the family. Rebecca didn't waste time. By the time she was discharged from the hospital, she had a lawyer on retainer. The divorce was filed before Henry could even pretend to apologize. Caleb and Jason stood by her side, finally seeing the man they'd spent a lifetime blindly defending for who he truly was. As for Olivia, she tried. God, did she try? At first it was cold silence. Then came the angry texts, blaming me for turning her family against each other, as if truth had ever needed my help to destroy their lies. When that didn't work, she switched tactics, regret, nostalgia, pleading. I miss you. We can fix this. Don't throw away 6 years over one mistake. One mistake. 6 years of erasure, humiliation, betrayal, reduced to one mistake in her mind. I didn't reply. Not once. Instead, I hired my own lawyer. I'd already prepared for this long before the Christmas ambush, back when I first started noticing Henry's books didn't add up, back when I realised silence was never going to save me. The divorce papers landed on Olivia's doorstep 2 weeks later. No note, no message, just a clean break. Exactly what we needed. The day I moved out, the weather was cold and clear. I packed light, clothes, laptop, passport, the essentials. I left behind wedding photos, dusty gifts from in-laws who never wanted me there in the first place, the life I had tried to build on land that had never been mine. I didn't look back. My new place wasn't fancy, a small studio above a bookstore near downtown Asheville, but it was mine. No judgment hanging in the air, no cold stares across a polished dinner table. Just peace and silence, but the good kind. I made a habit of waking early, brewing strong black coffee, and sitting by the window watching the town wake up. There was something about those first rays of light hitting the old brick buildings, the mist clinging to the streets, that made me feel like anything was possible again. I started reading again, working out again, cooking meals that didn't require pretending to like someone's family recipe. It wasn't about starting over. It was about finally starting for real. Sometimes Caleb and Jason would text. Updates about Rebecca, how she was recovering, how she had found a little house by the river and was planting a garden for the first time in her life. Once, Jason sent a simple message. Thank you for showing us the truth. Sorry we didn't see it sooner. I didn't reply right away. What was there to say? They needed to heal in their own way, just like I did. One rainy Saturday afternoon, I was flipping through a second-hand novel when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Then, a voicemail notification. Curiosity got the better of me. I played it. Olivia's voice, small and broken. I'm starting therapy. I know I don't deserve a second chance. I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm sorry for not standing up for you, for being a coward. I hope you find the happiness I couldn't give you. I sat there, listening to the rain hammering against the windows, feeling nothing, no anger, no sadness, no urge to call back. Forgiveness wasn't something I needed to give her. Closure wasn't something she could ask for. I already had it. I blocked the number. Not out of hate, out of freedom. Months passed. Seasons changed. Asheville slid from cold rains into the soft green of spring. I found new routines, new friendships. A version of myself I hadn't known could exist outside the walls of that house. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of old memories, a flash of Olivia's laugh, Henry's scowl, the heavy pressure of trying to belong, and I'd smile. Not with bitterness, not even regret, just understanding. I had survived. I had rebuilt. I had reclaimed every piece of myself they tried to erase. One evening, I was locking up the bookstore when an elderly woman passing by smiled and said, "New beginnings suit you, young man." I chuckled. Feels that way. She nodded, tapping her umbrella against the sidewalk. Don't waste it. I won't, I thought. Not this time. I slipped my keys into my pocket, turned up my collar against the lingering spring chill, and walked home under the streetlights. No chains, no doubts, no looking back. Freedom isn't loud. It doesn't come with fireworks or cheering crowds. It's quiet, solid, steady. It's the sound of your own footsteps, finally walking your own path. And for the first time in 6 years, I wasn't chasing love. I wasn't chasing approval. I wasn't chasing anything. I was simply living. And it was more than enough. Story 2. You ever have one of those moments where your whole life tilts sideways and you realize, oh, you were never safe here to begin with? Mine happened the day after our so-called family reunion. I opened my banking app just to check something routine and froze. My heart started hammering $487. From over 14 grand yesterday. I stared at the screen like maybe if I refreshed enough times, the real balance would magically reappear. Nope, still $487, still robbed blind. Across the kitchen, my brother-in-law, Jeremy, was lounging against the fridge, beer in hand, his mouth twisted into that smug, lazy half-smile he always wore when he thought he was being clever. "We needed it more than you, man," he said, not even blinking. I blinked for him, thumb still hovering over the refresh button, brain refusing to catch up. My sister Lauren, sprawled across the couch, didn't even pretend to be sorry. She swirled her wine, legs tucked under her like it was a Thursday night sitcom and not the active looting of my bank account. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Ryan," she laughed. "It's not stealing. It's family." I could feel my blood draining from my face. You drained my account." "It's not draining," Jeremy chimed in with a casual shrug. "We're going to pay it back. Eventually." I turned slowly, hoping stupidly, toward my mum sitting by the window, busy with her knitting. She didn't even look up. "Mum," I said, louder. "Did you know about this?" She sighed, like I was accusing her of something ridiculous. "Sweetheart, you've always been the one with the good job. No mortgage, no kids. You're fine. They're struggling." As if that somehow made it okay. From the recliner, Dad barely glanced up from his phone. "Language, Ryan. Language. Not theft. Not betrayal. Language." I turned back to Lauren, voice trembling. "How did you even get into my account?" She didn't miss a beat. "You left your login on the family computer. Maybe next time don't be so careless." Like it was my fault. "You're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be," Jeremy said, raising his beer in mock salute. "We didn't blow it on junk. We paid bills, bought groceries, survived." "You didn't even ask," I said low. "We didn't think we had to," Lauren snapped. "You've been helping us for years anyway. What's the difference if it's automatic?" I picked up my bag slowly. No one moved. No one apologized. No one even looked guilty. It was just another day to them. "You're leaving already?" Mum asked, like I'd just declined seconds at dinner. "Yep," I said, zipping my jacket. I reached for the door, paused just long enough to look over my shoulder. "Don't worry," I said, voice cold. "I'll be in touch." Lauren rolled her eyes. "We needed it more than you. Facts." Outside, the wind cut through my jacket, sharp and clean. I didn't notice. My ears were ringing too hard. "Ryan!" someone called. I turned to see my cousin Maddie jogging up, coat flapping behind her. "You okay?" she asked, voice careful. I yanked open my car door. "No," I muttered. "I heard what Lauren said," she added. It wasn't right. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because if I opened my mouth, I would have screamed until the windows shattered. Flashback real. It wasn't the first time. It never is. For years, I'd been the stable one, the responsible one, The family emergency fund nobody officially acknowledged, but everybody quietly tapped. Lauren forgot her car payment. I helped. Jeremy got laid off. I loaned him a few hundred. Mom's surgery deductible wasn't covered. Guess who quietly paid? Every time it was the same script. You're lucky, Ryan. God gave you more so you could share it. Family means supporting each other. And every time a little piece of me crumbled unnoticed, unmissed. I lived on ramen for 6 months when I was laid off. Skipped vacations, delayed car repairs, cancelled dates. Never asked for help. Never told anyone. Meanwhile, they assumed I was a bottomless well. 2 years ago, I helped pay off Lauren and Jeremy's credit card debt. They never even said thank you. Last week, Lauren texted about the reunion. Just bring yourself and your card. I thought she was joking. Now I knew better. 2 days after I walked out, Lauren called. Then again. And again. Then Jeremy texted, "Call her, bro. She's freaking out." On the 5th ring I picked up. Ryan, Lauren started, voice wobbling. "We have a problem." "Oh, we do," I said dead calm. "The power company came. We're way behind on the bill. Like, way behind. They're threatening to shut it off if we don't pay by Monday." I said nothing. "So," she rushed on, "we need your help." I laughed, an ugly, bitter sound I didn't even recognize. "You emptied my savings," I said. "And now you're asking for more?" "It wasn't just for us," she snapped. "We helped Mom and Dad too. Dad's car broke down, remember? Funny how nobody thought to mention that," I said. "You're being dramatic," she hissed. "It's family, Ryan." There it was, the magic word. The knife they always twisted with a smile. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, letting every memory unravel. Lauren calling me selfish for not paying for her daughter's braces. Jeremy complaining about how I always made him feel broke just by existing. Mom whispering that Ryan doesn't understand real struggles, like financial stability was some unfair genetic mutation instead of the result of my busted hands and busted heart. They never saw me as a son, a brother, a person, just a resource. 3 days later, Mum called. "We need to talk." No apology, no concern, just an expectation. "We're planning a family dinner," she said. "Just us. Tonight." My stomach twisted. Something told me it wasn't an ambush. It was worse. It was a negotiation. A power grab. And somehow, they still thought they had the upper hand. I said I'd come. I needed to see it with my own eyes. How deep the rot went. When I pulled up to my parents' house that night, the place looked exactly the same. White porch light humming. Lawn half dead. Wind chimes clanging like an off-key alarm. Nothing had changed. Except me. Inside, the smell of beef stew and denial hit me like a brick wall. Dad was parked in his usual chair, flipping through TV channels without really watching. Mum was clattering around in the kitchen, banging plates a little louder than necessary. Lauren leaned against the counter, arms folded tight across her chest. Jeremy lounged at the table, acting like he was just here for Sunday night football. "Ryan," Mum called over her shoulder without turning. "Glad you could make it." I didn't answer, just dropped my bag by the door and stayed standing. "Let's just get this over with," I said flatly. Jeremy grinned. "Maybe we can finally stop pretending you were robbed." I didn't blink. I was robbed. The grin slid off his face. Mom cleared her throat like she was giving a speech. "Mason, we know you're upset, but you have to understand we were drowning. Lauren and Jeremy were months behind on rent. Your father's medical bills piled up. We didn't have options." "You didn't ask," I said, voice cold. "You took." Lauren let out a breath, like I was the difficult one. We didn't spend it on dumb stuff, Ryan. We used it where it mattered. You sure about that? I asked quietly. Jeremy sat up straighter. What's that supposed to mean? I reached into my bag, pulled out a thick folder, and tossed it onto the table with a heavy thud. Inside, printed bank statements, credit card receipts, Venmo logs, color-coded, labelled. Maybe next time, I said calmly. Don't leave your Amazon orders on a shared family Prime account. Lauren's face drained of colour. $472 in makeup, $20 in gaming systems, $2,300 in Jeremy's car loan, and that was just the start. You went through our stuff? Jeremy barked, face flushed. I shrugged. Call it research. Mum's hands trembled as she reached for a paper. This isn't what it looks like. It looks exactly like what it is. I cut in. Fraud, theft, identity misuse. Dad finally looked up from the TV, frowning. You wouldn't. I already did. Silence slammed into the room so hard it rattled the silverware. I filed the reports 2 days ago, I said. Bank fraud. Identity theft. Financial exploitation. Lauren gaped at me. You called the cops on your own family? You're not family, I said, voice steady. Family doesn't bleed you dry and laugh while you drown. At that exact moment, 3 hard knocks shook the front door. Everyone jumped. Dad's face went sheet white. Mum's knitting dropped to the floor. Jeremy stood up too fast, knocking his chair backward. From outside, Financial Crimes Unit. Open up. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Ryan, Lauren whispered, wild-eyed. Tell me you're kidding. I didn't even flinch. I walked to the door, pulled it open. 3 agents stepped inside, calm as you please. Badges out. Clipboards ready. You Ryan Foster? The lead one asked. That's me. Thank you for your cooperation, he said. We'll take it from here. Behind me, I heard Lauren whimper. Jeremy cursed under his breath. Mum gasped, backing away like the walls were closing in. The agents turned toward them, voices even. You are listed as persons of interest in an active investigation into financial fraud and identity theft. No, 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 Mum cried. We're family. This is a misunderstanding. Family doesn't excuse financial crime, ma'am, one of the agents said smoothly. Lauren stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. Jeremy's fists clenched uselessly at his sides. Ryan, Mom, sobbed, reaching toward me. Please, we didn't mean to hurt you. We were desperate. I looked at her, really looked. For the first time, I didn't feel pity, just empty. You made your choices, I said quietly. Now you live with them. They tried to argue, to beg. I didn't stay to listen. I grabbed my bag, nodded at the agents, and walked out into the night. This time, nobody followed. Nobody called my name. Nobody guilt tripped me into turning around. Just silence. And damn, it was beautiful. Later that night, I drove with no destination. Past dark diners, empty gas stations, rows of sleepy houses where people still believed in things like family loyalty. My phone buzzed non-stop in the passenger seat. Dad, come back and fix this before it's too late. Lauren, I hope you're happy. They're freezing our accounts. Jeremy, you betrayed us. Mom, we're your blood, Ryan. Don't let them do this. I didn't answer a single one. Not out of spite, out of survival. I ended up outside the place that always felt like a sanctuary, my grandma's old house. She'd passed 5 years ago, but somehow I still had the key on my chain. If they ever forget who you are, baby, she'd once told me, you come home to yourself. And that night, I did. The key turned smooth and easy. The door creaked open like it had been waiting. No screaming, no demands, no guilt, Just me, breathing in the smell of old wood and freedom. I slept on the worn-out couch, phone face down and silent, for the first full night in years. When morning broke, it didn't feel heavy. It felt like a beginning. The first few days were the hardest. Not because I doubted myself, but because of how quiet everything got. No screaming voicemails, no pity texts, no demands pretending to be apologies. Just the wind whispering through the cracked windows of my grandmother's house and the slow, steady realization I was finally free. I made coffee in her chipped old mug, sat out on the back steps where the garden used to be, and let the morning sun climb up my face. For once, I didn't have anywhere to be. No family dinner to survive, no guilt trip marathon to run. It should have felt lonely. It didn't. Of course, the fallout hit fast. By the end of the week, Dad emailed me, all fire and brimstone. "You humiliated the family. What happened to loyalty?" I didn't reply. Lauren texted next. "They're freezing our accounts. Jeremy might lose his job. You ruined our lives over a couple $1,000. Hope you're happy. A couple thousand? Try tens of thousands over the years. Death by 1,000 cuts. But sure, make me the villain." Then Mum's voicemail came, voice small and cracked. "Ryan, please. We didn't mean for it to get this bad. They're threatening charges. We could lose the house." She sounded so broken I almost felt it crack something in my chest. Almost. Because the truth was, I had already lost a home long before the agents ever showed up. I lost it the first time they decided I was worth more as a bank account than as a son. 2 days later, a message popped up from someone I never expected, my cousin Matt. Barely spoken 5 words to each other at birthdays over the years. "Just so you know, Lauren's telling everyone you knew about the transfers. She's saying you approved them. Lawyers involved. Watch your back." I actually laughed. Even at the bottom of the hole they dug, Lauren was still trying to drag me down. I didn't get mad. I got smart. I called my lawyer and said, "Add defamation to the list and start the paperwork for a restraining order." I wasn't leaving anything to chance. Not every message was poison, though. One afternoon, an email landed in my inbox. Short, careful. From someone I hadn't thought about in years, Kelly, Jeremy's younger sister. "Hey Ryan, we haven't talked in forever. I just wanted to say you were right about all of it, about how they treated you, about how toxic it all was. I used to think you were cold. Now I think you were brave. Thank you for showing me there's a way out." I sat there staring at the screen for a long time. Brave. No one in my family had ever used that word on me before. It felt foreign, heavy, real. Weeks slid by. The investigation kept grinding forward. Jeremy lost his job. Lauren's account stayed frozen. Mum and Dad's mortgage got called into question. They tried to blame me. They tried to paint themselves as victims. But the truth? They weren't victims of me. They were victims of their own choices. They had spent years bleeding me dry, telling themselves it was fine because family means everything. Turns out, family without respect means nothing. One night, my phone rang again, unknown number. I should have ignored it, should have let it die in silence, but something in me was curious, so I picked up. "Ryan?" The voice was raw, shaky. "Lauren." I didn't say anything. "Just let the dead air stretch between us. I know you hate me," she blurted. "I know I messed up. I didn't think it would go this far," she sniffled. Jeremy's suspended. Mom cries all day. Dad won't even speak to me. And you always had the power to ruin everything. You just never used it. Until now. I stayed quiet. Please, she said. Just drop it. Please. I'll do anything. Just make it stop. For half a heartbeat, I almost softened. Almost. But then I remembered the smirk on her face when she said, "We needed it more than you." The way they all laughed while my world cracked open. I breathed out slow and steady. "No," I said simply. "You made this mess. You live with it." And I hung up. That night, I cooked myself dinner for one. Played the music I loved without anyone complaining it was too loud or too depressing. Sat out on the porch with a beer and watched the stars crawl across the sky. For once, there was no guilt clawing at my insides. No low-level panic about what emergency I'd be expected to fix next. Just peace. Quiet, heavy, healing peace. It's been 3 months since that night. 3 months since the agents knocked on the door. 3 months since my family looked at me, really looked at me, and realized they couldn't shame me back into place anymore. They tried to fight it. They tried to smear me. They tried to spin it into another sob story. It didn't matter, because I was already gone. New apartment, new number, new state, no more surprise visits, no more emergencies that somehow became my responsibility, no more walking around feeling like an ATM with a beating heart. At work, my boss noticed the difference, offered me a promotion. I took it, and then some. Funny how much lighter your life gets when you stop carrying people who only ever saw you as a stepping stone. A few weeks ago, a letter showed up. No return address. Inside, a check for $1,200 and a short, scribbled note. "Ryan, I left him. You were right. I was scared, but watching you leave gave me the courage to walk away too. This is for everything you paid for. The rent, the groceries, the laptop for Ellie. Thank you for being the example I needed. Kelly." The first read it twice, then set it down carefully, and I cried. Not because I was sad, not because I missed them, but because, for the first time in years, someone from that family didn't see me as a wallet. They saw me as a person. People sometimes ask, "Do you regret it?" The answer's easy. No, I regret waiting so long. I regret every sleepless night. Every dollar I handed over hoping they'd see me, appreciate me, love me. But standing up, setting fire to the bridges they built from my bones? Never. If you're reading this and you've ever been the strong one, the responsible one, the "you're fine, you can handle it" one, let me tell you what I wish someone had told me years ago. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to save yourself. And when you do, you don't lose a family. You find yourself. Story 3. Christmas Eve, 9:32 p.m. My phone buzzed on the counter next to my half-empty mug of coffee. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, picked it up, and stared at the message. "Thanks for breathing. Don't show up, Dad, that was it." No Merry Christmas, no explanation, just 6 cold words, like a receipt confirming I was no longer part of the family. I sat down heavily at the kitchen table, the cheap fairy lights overhead blinking weakly. I don't know why I kept rereading the message, like maybe it would morph into something softer if I stared long enough. Spoiler, it didn't. They were all together, my parents, my sister, smiling around the Christmas tree, pretending like I hadn't been carrying both their weight and mine for the last year and a half. Rent, groceries, electric bills. Every month, I made sure it all got paid. My sister, Marissa, 28, supposedly between jobs for the 3rd time in 2 years, had moved in with me temporarily after her last breakup. I covered everything while she got back on her feet, no questions asked. I told myself that's what family did. Until the night before Christmas Eve, when Marissa grabbed her purse, paused at the door, and casually tossed over her shoulder, "Oh, by the way, if they ask, I told Mom and Dad you're kinda just crashing here. You know, since your name's not on the lease. I blinked, dishwater dripping from my hands. You told them what? I asked, voice flat. She shrugged like it was no big deal. Relax, it's easier this way. I didn't want them thinking I'm letting you stay here rent-free, but, I said carefully, I pay all the rent. Yeah, well, she said, grabbing her coat. They don't need to know that. And then she was gone. I didn't call after her. I didn't text to argue. I just sat back down at the table and stared at the pile of dirty dishes she had left behind. How many times had I done this? Swallowed my pride, covered the bills, played the role of the responsible one while they barely hid their contempt. By midnight, my decision was made. I got up, pulled the toolkit from the hallway closet and changed the locks. No hesitation, no second guessing. For the first time in a long time, the apartment felt lighter. The next morning, around 8:15 am, I heard fumbling at the door. Click, click, thud, more frantic jiggling. I didn't open it. I just smiled to myself and placed 2 boxes neatly outside. One medium-sized, wrapped with a gold ribbon, and the other, smaller, vibrating faintly. The boxes sat there quietly. Well, mostly. The smaller one buzzed now and then, like an angry bee trapped inside. I leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping reheated coffee, and waited. It didn't take long. The pounding started less than 5 minutes later. First, a polite knock, then fists slamming against the door. "Logan, open up! What the hell is this?" Marissa's voice, raw and furious, cut through the thin walls. I stayed where I was, calm, detached. When the banging finally stopped, I opened the door just a crack. There she stood, messy bun half undone, eyeliner smudged like she hadn't slept or cried all night. She was clutching the silver box like it might explode. "Why is it vibrating?" she snapped. I tilted my head. "Christmas present," I said. "You should open it." She shoved past me into the apartment without waiting for an invitation, dropped the box on the coffee table with a thud. The gold ribbon fell loose as she ripped off the lid. Inside, neatly arranged, a copy of the $782.46 credit card bill opened under my name, but her shopping habits. Printouts of her texts to friends, laughing about bleeding my brother dry. A flash drive labelled in black Sharpie for Mum and Dad, "Play loud." At the very bottom, a sticky note, folded in half. She picked it up with shaking hands and read it. "Your lease is up." Emotionally and otherwise. For a second, she just stood there, blinking. Then she snapped. "You're heartless," she screamed. "You're insane." I shrugged. "No, I'm just done." Right then, my phone buzzed on the counter. "Dad." I picked up and put it on speaker. "Logan, what the hell is going on?" he barked. "Your sister showed us what you did. How could you humiliate her like that on Christmas?" I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I leaned forward, steady. "You mean the sister who opened credit cards under my name? Who racked up thousands while I paid rent, food, utilities, all while she told you I was squatting in my own apartment?" Silence on the other end. "That's not true," Marissa shrieked, grabbing for the phone. "He's lying! He's making this up!" I ignored her, calm, cold. "You want proof," I said to Dad. "Ask Capital One who signed up for that card. Ask whose email is on the account. Ask whose purchases match the Sephora bags in her closet." Still silence, the kind that fills a room and makes it impossible to breathe. I reached behind the TV and grabbed a little black speaker. Hit play. Marissa's voice crackled to life. "Honestly, he deserves it. He's like an ATM without a password. Why wouldn't I use him? The blood drained from her face. Dad didn't say a word. Neither did Mom, who I heard breathing hard in the background. Another knock, this one, softer. When I opened the door, it was Mason, Marissa's ex, the one she ghosted 6 months ago after draining his savings account for a new start. "I need to talk to both of you," he said, his voice low and furious. He stepped inside without waiting. His hands shook, not from fear, but something heavier. Anger. "Someone ordered 2 new iPhones and booked a hotel in my name last month," Mason said. "The fraud department called me yesterday. Guess who was listed as the pickup contact?" He didn't even wait for Marissa's answer. He just looked at me. Was it her? I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The box on the coffee table was open, evidence spilling everywhere. Screenshots, receipts, recordings. A mess she couldn't clean up with tears or gaslighting. For the first time in my life, Marissa didn't have a script. No fake sobs, no charming excuses, just silence. Mason shook his head slowly. "You should leave," he said to her, voice flat. "What?" she shrieked. "This is my home too." He turned to me. "Mind if I crash on your couch for a few nights? Looks like we've both been played by the same person." I nodded, because if there was one thing I had learned this Christmas, it was that real family, the kind you build, not the kind you're born into, doesn't steal your name or your future. Marissa hesitated for a second, like she might fight back. Then she realized no one was backing her this time. She grabbed her coat, the wrong one, it wasn't even hers, and stomped out, muttering curses under her breath. I tossed her real belongings into the hallway, 2 trash bags and a ripped suitcase. The door slammed shut behind her, and just like that, she was gone. The air inside the apartment felt still, heavy, but not in a bad way, more like peace. Earned peace. I turned to Mason, who was already flopping onto the couch, exhausted. "You okay?" I asked. He groaned. "I'll be better once she's not breathing down my neck. But yeah, I think I'm finally okay. Me too." For the first time in a long time, I actually believed it. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, same spot where I used to drown in resentment. Only this time, the coffee didn't taste bitter. Mason was still knocked out on the couch, wrapped in a blanket I hadn't used in years. The apartment was quiet, sunlight spilling through the cracked blinds, hitting the dust in the air like little floating stars. For the first time, the quiet didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. While Mason slept, I pulled out my laptop. I wasn't done yet. Not even close. I spent the next 3 hours building the case. Folders, files, screenshots, emails. I documented every single dollar Marissa stole under my name, from the fake credit card to Venmo charges, to the utilities she secretly tacked onto my accounts without permission. Then I filed an official police report for identity theft, sent fraud alerts to every financial institution, started the long, ugly process of untying my life from hers. By Friday, I had emails from Capital One and the utility companies. "Your claim has been approved. Full reimbursement is pending." I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. $7,082. 46 coming back to me. It didn't fix everything. Didn't give me back the years of exhaustion, the missed trips, the strained friendships. But it was something. Proof that I wasn't crazy for fighting back. Mason eventually stumbled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "You working on getting your life back?" I smiled. "Yeah. You?" He grabbed coffee from the pot. "One step at a time, man. One step at a time." The next few weeks moved slow but steady. We both got busy fixing what Marissa had broken. New locks, new bank accounts, new boundaries. Mason found a place across town by January. And me? I stayed right here. Because this was my home now, really mine. Marissa tried calling once, blocked. She tried emailing, deleted. Even Dad tried, left a long, rambling voicemail about how family needs to forgive each other and how we shouldn't ruin things over a few mistakes. I didn't call back. Because here's the thing they never tell you. Sometimes forgiveness isn't a door you open. Sometimes it's a door you lock and throw the key into the ocean. February came. One cold Saturday, a knock at the door. It was my grandmother. She looked smaller than I remembered, white hair tucked into a knitted cap, eyes sharp and sad. "Mind if I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside without a word. She sat at the kitchen table, folding her hands together like she was praying. "I heard what happened," she said after a while. "I heard about the bond." I frowned. "What bond?" Turns out, years ago, my grandfather had set up a savings bond in my name. Enough for a down payment on a house someday. Enough to build a future. But last year, quietly, Dad had cashed it out. Used the money to pay off Marissa's car debt after her fourth repo. Without telling me, without asking, I felt the anger rise up, hot, sharp, but I swallowed it down. I didn't need another explosion. Grandma slid a small envelope across the table. "I moved what was left into a private account for you," she said quietly. "It's not much, but it's yours again." Inside the envelope was a new account number and a balance sheet. Not a fortune, but enough to start over. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Really seen. Not as the stubborn one or the cold one or the problem, but as myself. The lawsuit hit in March. I didn't want it to get ugly, but they left me no choice. The attorney filed claims for restitution. Financial damages, emotional distress. At the hearing, Mum cried. Dad looked everywhere but at me. Marissa didn't even bother showing up. The judge didn't waste much time. Restitution awarded, debt cleared, court costs paid. I walked out of that courtroom lighter than I'd felt in years. Not because I won, not because I got a check, but because I was finally free from needing their approval. I didn't even know how heavy that chain was until it was gone. 3 months later, a letter showed up. No return address. Handwritten. I almost tossed it. Almost. Inside a photo, me holding Marissa's daughter Eliana at her 3rd birthday party years ago. Both of us smiling so hard it looked painful. On the back, a scrawl. "I'm sorry for how my mum treated you. Thank you for loving me anyway." Ellie, I sat at the table, the cheap fairy lights blinking over my head, same as they had last Christmas. Except this time, the lights didn't feel like a mockery. They felt warm. I put the photo in the drawer next to my lease agreement, my passport, my new bank paperwork. Not because I needed to cling to the past, but because it was proof that kindness leaves fingerprints, even when no one says thank you at the time. People still ask me sometimes, "Wasn't it hard to cut off your own family?" And I tell them the truth. It was harder to stay. I didn't walk away because I hated them. I walked away because I finally loved myself enough to stop bleeding for people who handed me the knife. And you know what? Peace isn't loud. It doesn't crash through the door or announce itself with fireworks. Peace is a quiet apartment, a worn couch, a fridge full of food you bought with your own money. Peace is the first deep breath you take after years of drowning. Peace is a Christmas morning where your phone stays silent, and it's not an absence anymore, it's a gift.